The first thing Helena Fairfax noticed was that Lady Sabine Mowbray was sitting in her chair. Ravenscourt House had been prepared for 40 guests. That July evening, every candle lit, every silver fork aligned, every footman moving, with the polished quiet expected beneath a ducal roof. Yet at the long dinner table, where Helena's place should have been at the Duke of Ravenscourt's right, Sabine sat in pale blue silk, as though the position had always belonged to her. Helena stopped only long enough to understand that the mistake was not hers. Her own card stood 4 places farther down, beside Colonel Bretherton, an elderly widower who heard poorly. Adrian had already taken his place at the head of the table. His gaze followed Helena's toward the cards, and something in his expression hardened. Sabine rose halfway. "Helena, I understood you wished to sit nearer Lady Margaret." Helena looked at her. "From whom?" Sabine's smile did not change. "I thought it had been arranged." Adrian said, "Not by me." Conversation around them thinned. No one wished to stare at a duchess, displaced in her own dining room, which meant nearly everyone stared while pretending not to. Helena could have ordered the cards changed. She could have made the footman move chairs, while officers and their wives waited in a silence no one would forget. Instead, she lifted her chin. "Then we shall not delay dinner over it." Adrian's eyes met hers. For one moment she thought he might overrule her. He did not. Helena crossed to the lower place and sat. The humiliation was quiet enough to be respectable. That made it worse. During the first course, Lady Sabine answered a question from Lady Tremaine about a widow's annuity before Helena could speak. Sabine knew the family, the regiment, even which sister had taken in the youngest child. The knowledge was real. What unsettled Helena came moments later. She asked a footman to carry a message to Mrs. Crispin regarding a parcel expected at Dover Street the next morning. The young man inclined his head, then glanced instinctively toward Sabine before catching himself. His face changed at once. "Yes, Your Grace." He moved away. Adrian had seen it too. His attention followed the footman, then returned to Sabine. By the second course, Helena understood the true shape of the insult. Another woman had not merely been placed at her husband's right. The house had accepted the change without surprise. She endured the remainder of dinner, with the same calm she had used for 6 years whenever some small discomfort seemed too petty to name. Afterward, the gentlemen withdrew toward the card-room, and the ladies gathered near the drawing-room fire. Sabine attached herself to Lady Tremaine and began discussing school fees for 2 officers' daughters, whose petitions were due before the end of the month. Helena heard her say, "I'll see that Ravenscourt's position is understood." No one corrected her. Helena left before she was asked to smile. She meant to find Mrs. Crispin. Instead, voices reached her from the partly open card-room door. Lionel Mowbray, Earl of Selworth, spoke first. "You cannot be surprised people notice it." Adrian answered, "Notice what?" "That Sabine still understands this house better than your wife does. The officers know her. Their wives know her. Your servants certainly know her. Helena is treated with respect, but sometimes she looks like a guest wearing the title." A chair moved inside the room. Adrian's voice went cold. "Careful, Selworth. I am being careful. You married Colonel Halden's daughter because Halden died saving you. Everyone close to you knows it." Silence followed. Helena's hand tightened around her skirt. Adrian said at last, "Halden went back for me when he had already reached safer ground. He got me far enough that the others could reach us. He died afterward. Helena had little money and less influence. I could not return home, and behave as though his daughter were no concern of mine. Lionel's reply came more softly. And Sabine, what about her? Before Spain, everyone assumed she might one day become Duchess. Adrian did not answer immediately. There was no agreement, he said, no promise. But you might have married her, Adrian exhaled, before I went to Spain. Yes, I thought I might. Helena stepped into the doorway. Lionel turned first. Colour left his face. Adrian rose so quickly that the chair legs struck the floor. Helena. She looked only at him. Did you love her? Adrian's expression changed. No, do not answer because Lionel is here. I'm not. Did you love her? Helena nodded once. No. And you want to marry her? Adrian's jaw tightened. Before Spain, I believed it was possible. And then my father died. Yes, and you married me. Adrian moved one step forward, then stopped when Helena did not move toward him. I married you badly. I see that now. No, her voice remained quiet. You married me honorably. That is the problem. Lionel looked toward the door. Helena did not spare him. You may stay, Lord Selworth. You have already heard enough to make privacy absurd. Adrian's face tightened. Helena, whatever began our marriage, it is not the whole of it. Perhaps not. But tonight another woman sat at your right. Your servants accepted her there. And I have just learned she once stood where I might have stood before duty intervened. I did not put her in that chair. You allowed her to remain in it. Because you said not to delay dinner, Helena met his eyes. You are the Duke of Ravenscourt. Do not pretend you did not understand what everyone in that room would learn from your silence. Adrian went still. You are right. The admission hurt more than resistance might have. Helena drew a breath. Replace me then. His face changed. No, why not? She already knows the widows, the officers, the servants, the traditions. She even knows where I am supposed to sit. I don't want Sabine in your place. Then you should have noticed when she began occupying it. Adrian said her name again, lower this time. Helena felt something inside her settle. I am going to Dover Street. Tonight? Tonight. May I come with you? No. May I call tomorrow? Helena looked at him for a long moment. Send your card. Adrian nodded. I will. He did not follow her. Within the hour, Helena left Ravenscourt House with Mrs. Crispin, one travelling case, and the small brass campaign compass that had belonged to Colonel Jonathan Halden, the worn edge pressed against the lining of her reticule as the carriage moved through London. She did not open it. Her father had already determined enough of her marriage. Back at Ravenscourt House, Adrian waited until the last guest departed before entering the dining room again. The place cards had not been cleared. Helena's stood 4 chairs from where it should have been. Mr. Mercer, the steward, appeared in the doorway. Adrian looked at him. Who changed the seating? Mercer hesitated. I don't know who wrote the change, Your Grace. Adrian's attention sharpened. Wrote it? Mercer nodded. The dinner memorandum was prepared correctly this morning. Her Grace was at your right. Lady Sabine was beside Lady Tremaine, and later, a narrow amendment slip was clipped into the page. The servants followed it. Where is the book now? In my office. And the slip still clipped inside it. Adrian looked at the empty chair to his right. Do not remove either. Mercer bowed. No, Your Grace. Adrian's gaze returned to Helena's abandoned place card. Someone had written his wife out of her rightful seat, and his household had obeyed without asking whether the Duchess herself had ever agreed. By 8 the next morning, Helena Fairfax had already discovered one difference between Dover Street and Ravenscourt House that no amount of marble or silver could imitate. When she asked for something here, no one looked toward another woman before obeying. Mrs. Crispin brought breakfast into the small morning room and found Helena at the writing desk, with Colonel Jonathan Halden's brass campaign compass resting beside her hand. Helena opened the worn lid once. The needle trembled, settled, and pointed north with the same indifferent certainty it must have shown her father on roads she would never see. She closed it again. "Put this in the upper drawer, please." Mrs. Crispin did so and waited. Helena looked at the blank sheet before her. "There are several things I want made clear today." "Yes, Your Grace. No servant in this house is to report my callers, letters, movements, or plans to Ravenscourt House unless I instruct it." Mrs. Crispin's expression sharpened. "Not even to His Grace? Not even to my husband?" "Understood. If he wishes to call, he sends a card like any other gentleman, Mrs." Crispin hesitated only a fraction. "And if he sends a message asking whether you are well?" Helena thought of Adrian, standing in the card-room doorway, hearing her leave and not attempting to stop her by force of rank. "You may say, I arrived safely last night. Nothing more." "Yes, Your Grace." Helena turned to her letters. The first went to the solicitor who handled the provisions of her marriage settlement. She asked him to confirm, in writing, what income remained for her separate use, and what expenses attached to the Dover Street house could be paid from it, without requesting Adrian's personal allowance. She did not ask about separation. She did not ask how a duchess escaped a marriage. She asked only what belonged to her already. The second letter went to Lady Tremaine. Helena wrote that she remained in London, remained Duchess of Ravenscourt, and had neither resigned nor delegated her responsibilities concerning military widows' annuities, school fees, or apprenticeship premiums. She added one final sentence before sealing it. "Any statement to the contrary has not come from me." Mrs. Crispin carried both letters away. Helena remained at the desk, looking at the empty place where the compass had been. Last night she had believed the most painful truth was that Adrian had married her because her father died saving him. Mourning had made the wound more precise. Duty had brought her into Ravenscourt House. Silence had left her uncertain whether she had ever truly been placed at its center. At 10:30, a footman entered, carrying a calling card upon a small tray. Helena did not need to read the name. "His Grace is below." "Yes, Your Grace." "Did he send a note?" "No." Helena took the card anyway. Adrian Fairfax, Duke of Ravenscourt. Nothing else. No command, no plea, no assumption. She placed it beside the inkstand. "Show him in." Adrian entered several minutes later. He had changed since the previous night, but not, Helena thought, slept very much. He stopped just inside the morning room and waited until the footman closed the door. Two chairs stood opposite Helena. One was near the desk. The other was several feet farther away beside the window. "May I sit?" Adrian asked. Helena indicated the farther chair. "There." He crossed to it without hesitation and sat. He did not pull it closer. He did not rest a hand upon her desk or glance toward the sealed correspondence beside the blotter. Helena noticed all of it. She wished she did not. "You asked Mr. Mercer about the dinner book," she said. "Yes." Adrian's voice was controlled. "I saw it myself this morning." "Where is it now?" "In Mercer's office at Ravenscourt House. The book has not left his possession." Helena nodded, and the amendment still clipped to the page. "Tell me exactly what you saw." Adrian leaned forward slightly, then seemed to think better of it and settled back. "Mercer's original entry placed you at my right. Lady Sabine was beside Lady Tremaine. The amendment slip changes both positions. It moves Sabine to my right and places you 4 chairs farther down. Helena kept her face still. Did Mercer write the amendment? He says he did not. Do you believe him? Yes. Can he identify the handwriting? No. Can you? No. Helena's gaze sharpened. Is it Sabine's? Adrian answered without delay. I do not know. The restraint mattered. The Adrian she had left last night might have preferred an accusation, simply because accusation offered direction. Then we do not call it hers. No. Did Mercer authorize the change? No. Helena looked toward the window, yet the servants followed it. Yes. Why? Adrian was quiet for a moment, because the instruction did not look impossible to them. That answer turned her back toward him. Explain. My mother relied heavily upon Sabine during the last years of her illness. Sabine arranged military family calls, officers' wives' visits, subscription correspondence, and practical matters my mother could no longer manage herself. I knew she helped your mother. You did not know how much. Helena heard the admission beneath the sentence. Did you? Not fully. I was away too often. When I returned, I accepted arrangements that were already functioning. And after your mother died, Adrian's jaw tightened. Some of those habits remained. After we married? Yes. Helena rose and crossed toward the fireplace. Adrian remained seated. Did you authorize Sabine to continue speaking for Ravenscourt? Not in those words. That is not an answer. No, I did not formally authorize her to speak for the house after our marriage. Did you formally tell the servants she no longer could? Silence. No. Helena looked at him. Then perhaps they were not disloyal last night. Perhaps they were confused. Adrian's expression hardened with something directed mostly at himself. That may be worse. It is certainly less convenient, he accepted the rebuke. Helena continued. A servant who believes he is obeying the last clear instruction he received is not the same thing as a servant conspiring against his Duchess. Agreed. I will not have anyone dismissed because it makes the situation simpler. I had no intention of dismissing anyone without cause. Helena gave him a look. Adrian exhaled. I had considered questioning half the household before luncheon. That sounds more like you. I am beginning to understand that this is not necessarily praise. The dry answer nearly touched something softer in her. Helena did not allow it to. What does Mercer remember about the amendment? Something he wants to tell you himself. Her attention sharpened. He told you that? He remembered it while examining the dinner book after I left his office. He said the memory concerns how the written change reached the servants. Did he tell you the substance? No. And you did not press him? Adrian's mouth tightened faintly. I wanted to. But you asked me last night to stop deciding things for you. The sentence settled between them. Helena looked away first. I did not ask you to become passive. I know. If someone is in danger, act. If someone destroys evidence, stop them. But do not turn every discomfort into a ducal order because command is easier than uncertainty. Adrian nodded. Understood. Helena returned to the desk and sat. Then hear my conditions. I am listening. You will make no statement in my name. You will not tell anyone I am resting, distressed, unwell, overwhelmed, or temporarily withdrawing from charitable work unless I have said so myself. Agreed. You will not order Lady Sabine out of drawing rooms, committees, or dinners merely because you are angry. Adrian's jaw flexed. That will be more difficult. Difficulty is not an exemption, no. If she used my name or arranged that amendment, we establish it with facts, yes. The dinner memorandum and amendment slip remain in Mercer's office. Yes, if they are examined again, Mercer notes in his steward's memorandum who requested the book and why. Nothing more elaborate. Adrian inclined his head. I will tell him. And no copy is to be treated as though it were the original. Agreed. Silence followed. Adrian looked at her with an expression Helena could not quite read. May I ask one thing? You may ask. May I call tomorrow after Mercer has spoken to you? Helena considered him. Send your card. Something in his face eased, though only slightly. I will, he rose. Helena remained seated. At the door he stopped. Last night, when you left, I wanted to follow you. I know. I did not because you told me not to. Remember that. Adrian looked back at her. I intend to remember far more than that. Then he left. 10 minutes later, Mrs. Crispin entered carrying another card. Mr. Mercer, Your Grace. He requests permission to call tomorrow morning. Helena took the card. Did he say why? Only that he remembered precisely how the amendment reached the dining room servants. Helena looked toward the drawer containing her father's compass, then back at Mercer's card. Tell him 9 o'clock. Mrs. Crispin nodded and withdrew. Helena remained at the desk with Adrian's card on one side and Mercer's on the other. One man had begun learning that access required permission. The other was about to explain how Lady Sabine had learned to behave as though Helena's permission had never been necessary. Susur. At 9 the next morning, Mr. Mercer arrived at Dover Street without the dinner memorandum book. Helena noticed that first. The bound volume remained, where she had instructed it to remain, in his office at Ravenscourt House, with the narrow cream amendment slip still clipped to the page. Mercer stood in the small morning room with his hat held against his coat, and the grave expression of a man who had spent years protecting a household from confusion, and had only now begun to suspect that confusion itself had become part of the household. Sit, Mr. Mercer. Thank you, Your Grace. He obeyed. Helena remained behind the writing desk. The upper drawer containing her father's brass campaign compass was closed. She had not opened it that morning. His Grace told me you remembered how the amendment reached the dining room servants. Yes. Then tell me what you saw, not what you think happened. Mercer inclined his head. I prepared the dinner memorandum after luncheon. Your Grace was entered at His Grace's right. Lady Sabine was beside Lady Tremaine. And then? I left my office for perhaps a quarter of an hour. When I returned, the narrow amendment slip had been clipped inside the page. Helena kept her hands still. Did you see anyone write it? No. Did you recognize the hand? No. Then we will not invent an author. Something in Mercer's face eased. No, Your Grace. Helena leaned slightly forward. What did you remember afterward? Mercer took a breath. About half an hour later, I was in the passage behind the dining room. Lady Sabine came from the direction of my office. She had the amendment slip in her hand. Helena felt the cold pressure beneath her ribs return. You are certain it was the same slip? Yes, it is narrower than our ordinary household papers, and one corner is creased. I noticed the crease when I first saw it in the memorandum book. What did Lady Sabine do? She gave the slip to Thomas, the junior footman responsible for helping with the place cards. What did she say? Mercer's mouth tightened. She said, Her Grace prefers the arrangement altered. See that the cards are moved before the guests come down. Helena did not move. Those words, as nearly as I can swear to them. Did she say I had spoken to her? No. Did she say His Grace had ordered it? No. Did she say anyone else had authorized the change? No. And you heard her use my name? Yes. Helena looked toward the window. Outside, a carriage passed along Dover Street, its wheels briefly louder than the silence in the room. Did you question her? No. Why? Mercer's answer came slowly. Because it did not seem impossible that your grace might have told her. There was no cruelty in the words. That made them worse. Helena turned back to him, because Lady Sabine had given instructions in Ravenscourt House before. Yes, during the late Duchess's illness. Yes, and after her death. Mercer hesitated. At times, Helena watched him. Give me one example you remember clearly. One. Nothing more. Mercer considered before answering. Last winter, Major Willoughby's widow called unexpectedly while Lady Sabine was visiting. Lady Sabine told the hall porter that your grace preferred Mrs. Willoughby to be shown to her, because the matter concerned an old regimental obligation. Helena remembered the afternoon. She had returned from an appointment to find that Mrs. Willoughby had already gone. Someone had told Helena the widow wished only to speak with a person familiar with her husband's regiment. At the time, Helena had accepted the explanation, because objecting would have seemed petty. Did I give that instruction? Not to my knowledge. Did anyone ask whether I had? Mercer lowered his eyes. No. Helena sat back. For 6 years, she had believed dignity meant refusing to quarrel over small trespasses. One diverted caller, one changed arrangement, one decision already made before she entered the room. Individually, each had seemed too slight to protest without appearing insecure. Together, they formed a structure. Mr. Mercer, I do not want servants frightened into telling me what they think I wish to hear. His gaze rose. No, Your Grace. Lady Sabine may have written the amendment. She may not have written it. You did not see her do so. Correct. But you did see her carrying it. Yes, and you heard her tell Thomas that I preferred the alteration. Yes, that is what you know. Nothing more. Mercer nodded. Helena studied him. Were you disloyal to me? His expression changed at once. Your Grace, I would never. I am asking what you believe. He stopped. His answer, when it came, was quieter. No, but I failed to question an instruction given in your name. Because the household had taught you that Lady Sabine's confidence was enough. Mercer looked stricken. Yes. Helena allowed the truth to remain unsoftened. Then, that is the habit we must understand, not replace one blind obedience with another. I understand. He rose, but did not immediately reach for his hat. There is something else. Helena waited. When Lady Sabine handed Thomas the slip, I thought nothing of it, because she had handled such matters for years before your Grace came to Ravenscourt. He swallowed. I see now that I continued measuring her authority by its past, rather than yours by its present. Helena felt the words more deeply than she expected. Not because Mercer meant to wound her, because he had finally named the thing she had been unable to name for herself. Thank you for saying it plainly. I am sorry, Your Grace. Then, remember it plainly as well. I will. After he left, Helena remained alone for several minutes. She had wanted a neat villain and a neat proof. What she had instead was more dangerous. Sabine had not needed to seize power dramatically. She had only needed to speak in Helena's name inside a house accustomed to believing her. Shortly before noon, Lady Margaret Ainsley arrived without ceremony and entered the morning room, carrying such visible irritation that Helena nearly smiled. You look murderous. Margaret removed her gloves. Only socially. That is generally more durable. Margaret sat opposite her. London has been busy. Helena poured tea. With what? With you. The faint humour vanished. Margaret leaned forward. Yesterday morning, Lady Cottesmore was told that Adrian married you because Colonel Haldon died saving him. Helena lowered the teapot. That part is true. Yes, which is why the rest travels so well. Mrs. Bellairs was told You had left Ravenscourt House and would probably withdraw from public duties until your domestic circumstances were settled. Who told her? Sabine. Helena's fingers tightened around the handle. And the third? Lady Harbury heard that Sabine was quietly keeping the military widow's work steady because you were understandably unable to manage it at present. From Sabine, from Lionel. Helena set the pot down carefully. One statement was private truth, the second was prediction. The third had become replacement. Did any of them hear that I resigned? No. Did any of them speak to me? No. Did Adrian tell anyone I intended to withdraw? Not that I could discover. Margaret's eyes hardened. Helena, this is not simple gossip. No. Helena looked toward the window. Gossip usually distorts something that has happened. This is arranging the room before I enter it. Margaret went still. Helena continued. At dinner, Sabine told a footman I preferred my own chair moved. Now she is telling London I prefer my duties moved as well. What will you do? Before Helena could answer, a footman entered with a note upon a tray. The seal belonged to Lady Tremaine. Helena opened it. The wording was polished, concerned, almost kind. That made its meaning no less severe. Lady Tremaine informed her that the committee would meet the following morning to consider whether Helena should be temporarily relieved of correspondence and petition duties while her domestic circumstances remained unsettled. Lady Sabine had offered to receive military family callers during the interval. Margaret read Helena's face. What? Helena handed her the note. Margaret finished it and exhaled sharply. She moved quickly. She moved before I did. Helena folded the paper once. That is what matters. Will you attend? Helena thought of the chair 4 places from Adrian. She thought of Mercer admitting that no one had questioned Sabine because the instruction sounded possible. For years, Helena had believed refusing to make scenes was the same as possessing dignity. Perhaps dignity also required refusing to disappear. Yes, Margaret's expression sharpened with approval. Do you want me beside you? In the room? Helena rose. Not beside me unless I ask. Understood. Helena placed Lady Tremaine's note on the desk. She did not open the drawer containing her father's compass. She did not need anyone, living or dead, to choose her direction now. Tomorrow, she said, Lady Sabine may explain why she is preparing to replace a woman who has not resigned. Sewer by 10:30 the following morning. Helena was seated in Lady Tremaine's drawing room with 6 committee women, 2 secretaries, and Lady Sabine Mowbray, who had chosen a chair near the escritoire, as though usefulness alone had granted her a permanent place there. Lady Margaret sat 2 chairs away from Helena, exactly as requested. Not beside her, not shielding her, simply present. Sunlight fell through the tall St. James's windows, but the brightness only sharpened the unease in the room. Lady Tremaine opened the meeting with careful formality. Her Grace of Ravenscourt has written to confirm that she has neither resigned nor delegated her duties. Lady Sabine has nevertheless raised a question concerning continuity, while her Grace's domestic circumstances remain unsettled. Helena looked directly at Sabine. Then perhaps Lady Sabine should state the concern herself. Sabine folded her hands. Only that charitable work should not suffer because private circumstances have become difficult. You have left Ravenscourt House, Helena. Subscribers will notice. Military families will notice. It may be kinder to everyone if practical responsibilities are temporarily divided. Which responsibilities? Helena asked. Lady Tremaine might assume correspondence. I could receive military family callers until matters become calmer. Have I failed to answer any widow's petition? Sabine paused. Not that I know. Has any school fee request gone unanswered? No. Has any apprenticeship premium been delayed? No. Helena turned to Lady Tremaine. Has any deadline under my responsibility been missed? No. Has any subscriber complained that the committee cannot function because I left Ravenscourt House? Not to me. Helena looked back at Sabine. Then, what failure are we correcting? A slight tension appeared around Sabine's mouth. Must a failure occur before sensible precautions are taken? If the precaution removes responsibility from a woman who has not failed, I think so. One of the older committee women lowered her gaze to the papers in her lap. Lady Tremaine said, "The proposal was intended as temporary relief, not removal." Helena heard the phrase and recognized how easily concern could be made to sound generous. Relief is something one asks for when burdened. I did not ask. Sabine answered softly. People do not always know when they need help. Then perhaps they should still be permitted to speak before others decide they cannot manage their own work. The room tightened. Before Sabine could reply, the door opened. A servant entered with the uneasy expression of a man announcing someone too important to refuse. "The Duke of Ravenscourt, my lady." Helena did not look toward Adrian first. She looked at Sabine. Sabine's face barely changed. No surprise. Adrian entered a moment later. His gaze found Helena before moving to Lady Tremaine. "My apologies for intruding. I received a note this morning stating that you wished me present for a discussion concerning Her Grace's committee duties." Lady Tremaine frowned. "I sent no such note." Adrian stopped. "Then someone used your name." Sabine said lightly, "Perhaps someone thought clarification would prevent misunderstanding." Helena turned toward her. "Someone?" Sabine met her gaze. "I couldn't say." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he did not accuse her. Lady Tremaine summarized the proposal instead. Helena watched Adrian as he listened. His expression hardened with each sentence. By the time Lady Tremaine finished, Helena knew what he intended before he spoke. "Then, let there be no uncertainty," Adrian said. "Ravenscourt withdraws its support from any motion that removes Her Grace from duties she has performed without failure." Relief flickered across two faces. Sabine's mouth tightened. The problem appeared solved. Helena stood. "No." Adrian turned toward her. "Helena." "No." The single word quieted the room. "Your support is not what gives me authority here." Adrian stared at her. "I am trying to stop them from deciding for you." "By deciding for them?" The answer struck harder because Helena did not raise her voice. Adrian's expression changed. For one instant, she saw the instinct to defend himself. Then it passed. Helena continued. "If this committee believes I neglected my duties, let them say so. If they possess a resignation, let them produce it. If subscribers have complained, let us hear them. But I will not keep my place because my husband announced that his name outweighs every woman in this room." Adrian drew a slow breath. "You are right." Sabine looked at him sharply. He faced Lady Tremaine. "I withdraw what I just said." A murmur passed through the room. Adrian continued before anyone could misunderstand. "I do not withdraw my confidence in Her Grace. I withdraw my attempt to settle this by ducal influence. The facts I can properly state are these. I did not request this meeting. I did not ask anyone to reduce Her Grace's responsibilities. I have seen no evidence that she has neglected them. She has not told me she intends to resign." His gaze moved briefly to Helena. "Beyond those facts, Her Grace speaks for herself, and this committee must judge its own work." Helena remained standing for one heartbeat longer, then sat. Something inside her loosened. not because Adrian had defended her, but because, when she rejected the manner of his defense, he had not punished her for it. Lady Tremaine looked around the room. Then I will ask plainly, does anyone possess evidence that her Grace's work has suffered? No one answered. Sabine finally said, "My concern was prospective." "Then it was premature," Lady Tremaine replied. "I see no reason for redistribution." Two women murmured agreement. Helena turned towards Sabine. One further point. Sabine's eyes cooled. "Of course. Do not speak in my name again. I have only tried to prevent confusion." "Then begin by not creating it." Sabine inclined her head. "As you wish." It was not an apology. Helena had not expected one. The meeting ended shortly afterward. Lady Margaret left with another committee woman after giving Helena only a brief glance. She had kept her promise not to intervene. In the corridor, Adrian waited until the others had gone before approaching. He stopped several feet away. "You were right to stop me." Helena adjusted one glove. "Yes," a corner of his mouth moved. "I had hoped you might soften that. You needed accuracy, not comfort." "Also true." His expression became serious. "The moment Lady Tremaine described the proposal, I wanted to end it. I know, and I used the quickest weapon I possess." "Your title?" "Yes." Helena met his gaze. "You cannot restore my authority by exercising yours for me." "I understand that now. Understanding it once is not the same as remembering it." "Then correct me when I forget." Helena studied him. "That sounds suspiciously like permission." "It is closer to self-preservation." Against her will, the edge of a smile touched her mouth. Adrian noticed and wisely said nothing. Helena's expression sobered. "Who knew you were coming?" "Whoever sent the note." Lady Tremaine did not. "No, I did not, no." "Who saw the note at Ravenscourt?" "My secretary." I asked whether the hand resembled Lady Tremaine's. He said it did not. My valet knew I was dressing for a morning call, but not why until afterward. "Did the note name this committee?" "Yes." "Did it mention me?" "It said the matter concerned Her Grace's charitable responsibilities." Helena looked back toward the closed drawing-room door. "Sabine was not surprised when you entered." Adrian became very still. "I noticed. That is not proof she sent it." "No." "Or that Lionel did." "No." "Do not make anger do the work evidence has not done." Adrian exhaled. "You remove most of the pleasures from investigation. Mr. Mercer will be relieved." This time, Helena allowed the faint smile. A servant approached to announce that her carriage waited. Adrian glanced toward the stairs. "May I walk you down?" Helena considered. "Beside me." His gaze flicked toward her gloved hand, then returned to her face. "No arm." "No arm." They descended together. Adrian stayed close enough to accompany her and far enough that their sleeves did not touch. Helena noticed the discipline in it. Outside, her carriage waited at the curb. Adrian did not reach for her elbow when she mounted the step. Helena turned before entering fully. "Find out how that note reached you." "I will." "Wait for facts." Adrian held her gaze. "Not instructions." "Good." She started to turn. "Helena." She paused. "I am sorry I tried to win your place back for you." Helena looked at him for a long moment. "Learn why that was wrong, and the apology will matter more." "I intend to." She entered the carriage. As it pulled away, Helena looked back once. Adrian remained exactly where she had left him. Behind him stood Lady Tremaine's respectable house. Somewhere between that drawing-room and Ravenscourt House, someone had used another person's authority to place a duke in a room where he had not been invited. Sabine had already used Helena's name once. Now someone had used Lady Tremaine's. Helena no longer believed repetitions like that deserved the comfort of being called accidents. sewer. The following morning, Adrian's card arrived at Dover Street shortly after 10, accompanied by a single folded sheet bearing no seal. Helena recognized his hand before she opened it. He had written only that his secretary had found the original household memorandum from the late Duchess's final illness, and that he would not call unless Helena wished to see the wording for herself. Helena read the note once, then looked toward Mrs. Crispin. "Tell his Grace I will receive him at 11. "Yes, Your Grace." When Adrian arrived, he entered the morning room carrying no portfolio and no stack of papers. He stopped at the same respectful distance he had kept since Helena left Ravenscourt House. "The anonymous note?" Helena asked before he could sit. "No useful result." "Explain." "It was delivered to Ravenscourt by a boy hired near Piccadilly. He remembers the coin more clearly than the person who gave it to him. Man or woman, he could not swear to either. The note was folded before he received it." Helena nodded. "Then we know only that someone used Lady Tremain's name." "Yes, not Sabine's. No, not Lionel's. No." Adrian's mouth tightened. "I dislike how often you require me to say that. You will dislike being wrong more. I already do." Helena indicated the chair opposite her. It was closer than the one she had chosen on his first visit, though not beside her. Adrian noticed the difference and said nothing. He sat. Helena folded her hands. "The memorandum." Adrian took the single sheet from inside his coat. "My secretary made a fair copy. The original remains in the household records at Ravenscourt. He placed the copy on the small table between them and left it there." Helena reached for it herself. The entry had been made during the late Duchess's final illness. Lady Sabine Mowbray was authorized to receive military family callers, arrange certain visits among officers' wives, and attend to subscription matters when the Duchess was unable to do so. The last words were brief enough to make Helena read them twice. Until otherwise directed, she lowered the paper. "There is no end date." "No." "Was the entry genuine?" "Yes. The hand matches the surrounding memoranda, and Mercer remembers the arrangement." "So Sabine did not invent the authority she once had?" "No." Helena looked again at the copied words. When Mr. Mercer said the servants had been trained to accept her instructions, he was describing more than habit. Yes. They had been told in writing that her judgment carried the late Duchess's authority. Yes. "And after your mother died?" Adrian was silent for a moment. "There is no immediate entry ending it." Helena lifted her eyes. "After we married?" "Not that we have found in those early records." The answer landed with less shock than she expected. Perhaps because the pattern had already begun forming. "Did you know this exact memorandum existed?" "No." "Did you know the arrangement existed?" "Yes." "How much?" Adrian leaned back slightly, not retreating from the question. "Enough to know that Sabine knew families I did not know and remembered obligations I had forgotten. That is not the same as knowing servants might still treat her word as an instruction." "No." "Did you ever wonder why they did?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Not often enough." Helena's fingers tightened around the fair copy. "That is becoming a theme." "I know." She waited. Adrian continued without being prompted. "When I returned to London after long absences, there were military widows whose names meant nothing to me. Officers' wives with grievances older than our marriage and families my mother had known for 20 years. Sabine remembered all of them. Asking her was easier than rebuilding the knowledge myself, and easier than giving it to me. Yes." Helena turned the page over, though nothing was written on the back. The admission hurt precisely because it was ordinary. No grand betrayal, No secret affair, convenience. For years I thought I was simply slow, she said. Adrian's expression changed. Slow? At becoming Duchess. She placed the paper on the table. A widow would call and leave before I knew she had come. An officer's wife would expect an arrangement I had never discussed. A subscription matter would be settled before it reached my desk. I thought everyone else understood the house more quickly because I had not been raised for it. Helena, do not comfort me. Adrian stopped. Helena continued, more quietly. I assumed I was failing at a role no one had properly explained. But perhaps 2 sets of instructions were operating at once. Mine because I was Duchess. Sabine's because no one had made it clear that the old authority was finished. Adrian's gaze did not leave her. Yes, and you benefited from that confusion. His jaw tightened. Yes, say the whole thing. He breathed in. I benefited from Sabine knowing a system I did not want to learn again. I let usefulness become a substitute for clarity. Helena looked at him. Better. It does not feel better. Accuracy rarely does. Adrian gave a humorless half-smile. You have become merciless about that. Only because everyone else has been generous with assumptions. Silence settled between them. It was not comfortable, but neither rushed to fill it. At last Helena asked, "Have you summoned Sabine?" "No, do you want to?" Adrian's answer came immediately. "Very much. Why have you not?" "Because Mercer saw her carrying the amendment slip and heard her use your name." He did not see her write it. The memorandum proves she once held authority. It does not prove what she did with it that night. Helena studied him. And Adrian looked down once, then back at her. "And because yesterday I tried to solve your problem by becoming more powerful in the room, I am attempting not to repeat myself." Something inside Helena shifted. Small, unwelcome, real. That is improvement, a dazzling compliment. Do not become vain. I shall suffer modestly. Helena almost smiled. Instead, she asked, "What happens next?" "The secretary is checking whether any later household instruction renewed Sabine's role after our marriage." Helena's attention sharpened. Renewed? He found a reference he wants to verify against the surrounding entries before reporting it. "What year?" Adrian hesitated. 1814. Helena searched her memory. "I was in London most of that year. Not all of it." "Margaret, yes. You went to her when her husband died." Helena remembered the 3 weeks clearly. Margaret had been newly widowed and incapable of sleeping alone in the great dark house she had inherited. Helena had stayed until Margaret's sister arrived from Bath. Does the entry concern that absence? Possibly. Possibly is not fact. I know. Helena's eyes narrowed. You wanted to tell me what you think it means. Desperately. And you did not. I am trying to become irritating in new ways. This time the smile escaped her before she could stop it. Adrian saw it, and something softened in his face. He did not move closer. That restraint affected her more than any attempt would have. Helena looked down. Adrian's right hand rested open beside him against the chair cushion. He had not offered it. He was simply there, waiting for whatever she chose to say next. Helena reached across the narrow space and placed the tips of her gloved fingers in his palm. Adrian went completely still. He did not close his hand. Helena felt warmth through the thin kid leather, and for one brief moment remembered the man she had once believed she could spend an entire life learning. Only after her fingers settled did Adrian curl his own around them, lightly enough that she could withdraw without resistance. Neither spoke. The contact lasted only several breaths. Helena withdrew first. Adrian released her immediately. Do not mistake that for forgiveness. she said. "I won't, or for a promise that I am returning. I won't do that either." Helena searched his face for triumph and found none, only gratitude, carefully restrained. Adrian rose when the clock struck the quarter hour. "My secretary should have the later entry verified by tomorrow. Send me the wording before you come." "I will." He reached the door, then stopped. "Helena." She looked up. "I spent years thinking that because nothing in the house was openly wrong, nothing required changing." His voice was quiet. "I am beginning to understand that silence can be evidence of comfort for the person being obeyed and exhaustion for the person who is not." Helena held his gaze. "Remember that before you decide you understand me." "I will." He left. Helena remained seated after the door closed. Her fingers still remembered the warmth of his hand. But the fair copy of the old memorandum lay between her and the empty chair. The late Duchess had once given Sabine genuine authority. Adrian had never made its ending clear. And somewhere in the Ravenscourt records was a later entry made after Helena was already Duchess, waiting to reveal whether that authority had merely survived through neglect or whether her husband had deliberately given it life again. Sewer. Adrian's next card arrived the following afternoon with no accompanying document, which told Helena before she received him that the later household entry had not yet yielded the answer she expected. When he entered the Dover Street morning room, she was standing beside the writing desk, with one hand resting on the closed drawer that held her father's brass campaign compass. Adrian stopped at the distance he had learned to keep. "The 1814 entry?" Helena asked. "Verified as genuine, not yet useful enough to interpret safely." "Meaning, it refers to your absence from London, but the surrounding pages include several temporary household arrangements. My secretary is still determining which instructions continued after you returned, and which ended simply because the circumstance ended." Helena studied him. "You came here to tell me you still do not know." "Yes, that must be painful, excruciating." The answer was dry, but his face was not. Helena indicated the chair opposite hers. Adrian sat. She remained standing for several seconds before taking the nearer chair. The gloved touch from the day before lingered in her memory more vividly than she wanted. It had been easier to think of him as the man who failed her when she was not also remembering how carefully he had waited for her fingers to settle in his palm. "Then we will leave the record alone until it can speak clearly," she said. Agreed. Adrian expected another question about Sabine. Helena surprised both of them. "Why did you marry me?" He became completely still. "I told you. You told Lionel that my father died saving you, and that you could not return to England while his daughter remained without protection." "That is true. It is not the whole answer." Adrian looked toward the window. "No." Helena waited. He did not ask whether she truly wanted to hear it. For once, he seemed to understand that asking could become another form of escape. "It was late in 1811, he said. "We had been moving under miserable conditions for most of the day. Your father had already reached safer ground with several others when he realized I had not." Helena's breath tightened. Adrian continued. "He went back for you, yes. Was he ordered?" "No." Adrian's voice lowered. "He made the choice himself." Helena had heard pieces of the story throughout her life, but never from the man who survived it. "What happened?" "He found me separated from the others. I had lost my horse earlier, and by then I could barely keep the correct direction. Jonathan got me moving again. He stayed with me until the others reached us." Adrian's gaze dropped to his hands. "He died afterward." Helena heard the restraint in his voice and understood that the event remained much closer to him than 6 years of silence had suggested. You came home believing you owed him a life. Adrian looked at her. I came home believing I had his. The words struck deeper than she expected. And you thought marrying me would repay it. I thought making certain you were secure was the one honorable thing I could still do. Helena's mouth tightened. Secure. I know how the word sounds now. Do you? Like a house with every door locked from the outside. She looked at him sharply. Adrian did not soften the sentence. When I returned, I was not thinking like a man choosing a wife. I was thinking like a man trying to make a debt stop following him into every room. Helena felt anger rise, but beneath it lay something more painful. Did you pity me? Adrian answered immediately. No. Did you want me? He was silent longer. I wanted to do right by you before I understood what else I wanted. Helena looked away. And Sabine? Before Spain, I believed I might marry her one day. Because you loved her? No. Because she suited the life. Adrian nodded. She knew my mother. She understood Ravenscourt. Our families approved of each other. It would have been easy. Helena almost laughed. Easy seems to have governed a great deal of your life. Too much. She turned back to him. Was there ever an engagement? No. A promise? No. An affair before or after we married? No. His certainty allowed no ambiguity. Helena accepted it because nothing in the evidence had suggested otherwise. Then, what changed after we married? Adrian looked at her for so long that she felt suddenly exposed. You did. That is an evasion. No. His voice was quiet. I expected gratitude, perhaps respect. I expected to perform my duty well enough that neither of us would have cause to regret the arrangement. Instead, I began noticing you. Helena said nothing. You remember every widow's eldest child before you remember the widow's income. You move the sugar bowl toward Margaret before she asks, because she always takes more when she is upset. When you are angry and refusing to show it, you straighten whatever object is nearest your hand. Helena looked down. Her fingers had aligned the corner of a folded newspaper with the edge of the table. She withdrew them. Adrian almost smiled. That? You noticed those things and said nothing. Yes. Why? Because I had already decided what our marriage was. Duty, gratitude, habit. Those words were safe. Helena's heart beat harder. And love? Adrian's face changed. Love was not safe. The room seemed smaller. He continued before she could speak. If I called it love, then I had to admit that losing you would not merely make me dishonorable. It would destroy something I wanted for myself. Helena's throat tightened. So you preferred to treat me as though I were permanent? Yes. Permanent things can be neglected. Yes. He did not defend himself. If that dinner had never happened, what would you have done? Adrian's answer came slowly. I might have continued exactly as I was. Helena felt the truth before he finished. Until you stopped asking for anything from me. Until you stopped expecting anything. Until one day I realized you had become perfectly courteous and entirely unreachable. His voice roughened. And I would have told myself I never saw it coming. Silence followed. Helena rose, not because she wished to end the conversation, but because sitting still had become impossible. She crossed toward the window, then stopped halfway. Adrian remained seated. He did not follow. That mattered. Helena removed one glove slowly and laid it on the table. Adrian watched her without moving. She returned to the chair beside him and sat. His right hand rested open against his knee as it had the day before. Helena placed her bare hand in his. Adrian inhaled sharply. He did not close his fingers until she curled hers first. Then his hand settled around hers, warm and steady. Neither spoke for several moments. This was not the brief experiment of the day before. Helena let the contact remain, while the things they had said settled between them. Adrian's thumb moved once across the side of her hand, then stopped as though even that might be more than she intended. "You should have told me," Helena said. "I know. Not after I left. Before. I know. I might still have been angry. You had earned that right. I might still have demanded things change. You should have." Helena looked at their joined hands. "And you might still lose me." Adrian's fingers tightened only enough for her to feel the reaction. "I know that too." She lifted her gaze. "Do not say you love me now because you are frightened." Adrian's face went still. "I won't. If you ever say it, I want to know you are not using the words to stop me from leaving. Then I will. Wait until you can hear them without wondering whether they are a chain." Helena's breath caught. She did not answer. They remained hand in hand through another silence, longer than courtesy permitted and shorter than either wanted. When Helena finally loosened her fingers, Adrian released her at once. She drew her hand back and reached for the glove, but did not put it on immediately. A knock sounded. Mrs. Crispin entered carrying a cream invitation. "From Lady Tremaine, Your Grace." Opened it. A music hall. Adrian glanced toward the card. "When?" "2 evenings from now." Helena read the final lines twice. "Lady Sabine has asked for an opportunity to correct what she calls recent misrepresentations before several subscribers." Adrian's expression hardened. "Convenient." Helena slid the invitation onto the table. "You may attend." He looked at her. "Are you certain?" "Yes. What do you want from me?" Helena met his gaze. "Do not speak first. Do not correct anyone unless I ask. Do not rescue me because the room becomes uncomfortable." Adrian nodded. "And if someone lies about what I said, answer the fact. Nothing more. Understood." Helena picked up her glove. Adrian stood. At the door, he paused. "Helena, yes, thank you for trusting me with your hand." She looked at him steadily. "Do not make tenderness carry more weight than truth." "I won't." After he left, Helena remained beside the table with Lady Tremaine's invitation beneath her fingertips. In 2 nights, Sabine would have a room full of subscribers, old acquaintances, and people already wondering whether the Duchess of Ravenscourt intended to disappear from public life. Helena had spent 6 years enduring small exclusions because she feared looking insecure. She no longer feared being seen. She feared only allowing someone else to define what they saw. Sewer, too. Evenings later, Lady Tremaine's house in St. James's shone, with candlelight, polished instruments, and the restrained elegance of a gathering that had been arranged for Mozart, but now carried another kind of expectation. Helena arrived with Lady Margaret and entered without Adrian beside her. That was deliberate. He came several minutes later, greeted Lady Tremaine, and took a place near the rear of the music room where his presence could be acknowledged without becoming the center of it. Helena noticed him only after she had answered a subscriber's question about apprenticeship premiums for 2 soldiers' sons. When their eyes met across the room, Adrian did not approach. He waited. Helena remembered the rules she had given him. "Do not speak first. Do not correct anyone unless I ask. Do not rescue me because the room becomes uncomfortable." He had remembered them too. Lady Sabine Mowbray stood near the pianoforte in deep green silk, speaking with several women who had known the Fairfax family long before Helena's marriage. Sir Robert Ellington, one of the steadier subscribers to the Military Widows Fund, stood among them. with an untouched glass in his hand. Helena saw Sabine speak quietly to him, then glance across the room toward her. The first Mozart piece ended. Conversation spread while servants circulated with wine, lemonade, and small cakes. Lady Tremaine crossed to Helena with visible unease. Sabine has asked whether she may clarify the recent misunderstanding concerning the committee. Helena looked towards Sabine, before whom Lady Tremaine's mouth tightened. She did not specify. Then we both know what she means. I can refuse. No. Helena set down her glass. Let her speak. If she has been telling people what I intend, I would rather hear the words while I am standing in the room. Lady Tremaine studied her for a moment, then nodded. Sabine did not wait long. When several committee women and subscribers had gathered near the long windows, she spoke with the careful reluctance of someone who wished to appear burdened by the necessity of mentioning another person's troubles. I hope no one mistakes concern for interference. Helena has endured a difficult domestic week. It is entirely understandable that her responsibilities may require adjustment, while matters at Ravenscourt remain unsettled. Helena felt the room change. No accusation had been made, yet every listener had been invited to imagine one. Sabine continued. Military families depend upon continuity. Subscribers deserve assurance that correspondents and callers will not be neglected because private circumstances have become painful. Sir Robert frowned. I had understood. Lady Tremaine was assuming the correspondence for a time. Lady Tremaine answered at once. You understood incorrectly. Sir Robert looked towards Sabine. Then perhaps I misunderstood what was said. Sabine remained composed. I said only that such an arrangement had been considered. Helena stepped forward. By whom? Sabine turned toward her. By people concerned for the work. Did I authorize it? No. Did Lady Tremaine? No, Lady Tremaine said. Helena looked toward Adrian. More than half the room followed her gaze. He did not speak. He did not move toward her. He looked at Helena first and waited. The restraint was so exact that she felt it more strongly than she would have felt his hand at her back. Helena gave the smallest nod. Only then did Adrian say, No, I did not authorize any change to Her Grace's committee duties. He stopped. No command followed. No warning to Sabine. No declaration that Ravenscourt's favor depended upon obedience to his wife. Helena turned back. Then the proposed arrangement was not mine, not Lady Tremaine's, and not His Grace's. Sabine's expression cooled. It was a practical suggestion, presented often enough that Sir Robert believed it had already been agreed. Sir Robert shifted. There was more than that. Helena faced him. Tell me. I was given to understand that you were likely to withdraw from active committee work for a time. By whom? He hesitated. Lady Sabine. A silence opened around them. Helena looked directly at Sabine. When did I tell you I intended to withdraw? You did not. When did I tell anyone? You did not. Then, how did you know what I was likely to do? Sabine's composure thinned by a fraction. Because you left your husband's house. Helena heard several quiet breaths around her. That is a fact about where I sleep. It is not a resignation. Lady Margaret stepped forward from the edge of the gathering. She did not move beside Helena. She did not need to. Lady Sabine told me the same thing before Helena announced any change in her duties. Margaret said. Sabine turned toward her. I expressed concern. You said Helena would probably step back and that you would keep the military work from suffering. Mrs. Ashcombe, another committee woman, lifted her chin. You said nearly the same at Lady Harbury's. You told me Her Grace's responsibilities would likely be redistributed quietly. Sabine's eyes hardened. Speculation is not dishonesty. No, Helena said. But speculation repeated often enough becomes expectation. Expectation becomes permission when no one asks the person whose name is being used. Sabine looked around the gathered faces. You speak as though I have profited from this. I have spent years doing work others found tedious. I knew these military families before Helena entered Ravenscourt. I do not dispute your work, Helena replied. I dispute your right to turn that work into my consent. Sir Robert looked between them. Then you have no intention of withdrawing? Helena answered him directly. None. And Lady Tremaine is not taking over your correspondence? No, Lady Tremaine said, nor will Lady Sabine receive military family callers on behalf of this committee, unless the committee expressly asks her to do so. Sabine's face changed. You would deprive families of useful knowledge because Helena is offended. No, Lady Tremaine replied. I am ending the habit of allowing informal assumption to function as committee authority. Sabine looked toward Adrian. Helena saw it. Perhaps Sabine expected him to protect an old family intimate from embarrassment. Perhaps she expected him to soften Lady Tremaine's decision. Adrian did nothing. He waited again. For years, his silence had allowed Helena to vanish into the background of his household. Tonight, for the first time, his silence made room for her. Sir Robert inclined his head toward Helena. Then I am satisfied. Do not be satisfied merely because I say I am competent, Helena replied. Ask Lady Tremaine for the accounts. Look at the annuities, the school fees, and the apprenticeship payments. Judge the work. Surprise crossed his face, followed by respect. I shall. A servant announced that the musicians were ready to resume. The gathering began to loosen. Conversations restarted more cautiously. Sabine stood alone for several seconds, but Helena did not mistake discomfort for justice. She turned toward Lady Margaret. Helena. Sabine's voice stopped her. The room had thinned enough that only those nearest could hear. Sabine's expression had recovered its polish. Before you congratulate yourself, ask your husband one question. Adrian's face sharpened. Helena did not look at him. Which question? Ask how long he continued consulting me after he married you. The words entered with terrible precision. Helena did not believe the implications Sabine wanted them to carry, but Adrian had already admitted that old household habits survived their marriage. Helena turned toward him. He did not pretend confusion. After we married, she said. Did you continue consulting Lady Sabine? Adrian answered immediately. Yes, Lady Margaret inhaled softly. Helena kept her eyes on him. Once, no, for how long? Adrian's jaw tightened. I cannot answer accurately without examining the records. Do you remember enough to know whether it continued beyond our first year? He held her gaze. Yes. The pain came more cleanly because he did not soften it. Helena felt the memory of his bare hand around hers 2 evenings earlier and hated that tenderness did not make this truth smaller. Why did you not tell me when we discussed your mother's arrangement? Because I had not yet separated what I remembered from what I could verify. That is not the same as not knowing it happened. No, Helena felt anger rise. Adrian did not step toward her. I will not guess merely to make this easier, he said. Good. Helena, not here, he stopped. She looked toward the music room, where Sabine had chosen the battlefield and therefore expected to control the damage. She does not choose the room in which I learn the rest. Adrian inclined his head. Tell me what you want. Tomorrow, Dover Street. Yes. Every post-marriage instruction you can verify. Nothing omitted because you think it too small to matter. Agreed. Facts before explanation. Agreed. The musicians began again in the adjoining room. Helena returned to her chair beside Lady Margaret. Across the room, Adrian remained where she had left him. Sabine had lost the right to speak for Helena that evening. But with one final question, she had opened a deeper wound. The old authority inside Ravenscourt House had not merely survived because everyone forgot to end it. Adrian himself had continued to use it. Sewer. By 9:30 the following morning, Adrian's note lay open on Helena's desk at Dover Street. It was only one page, written in his own hand, and it contained no apology. Helena had required facts before explanation, and he had obeyed. In the autumn of 1813, a little more than a year after their marriage, Adrian had instructed his secretary that Lady Sabine Mowbray might be consulted where necessary concerning military family arrangements inherited from the late Duchess. The wording had been verified against the original household records at Ravenscourt House. Adrian added one further sentence. The instruction contained no defined limit, and he had found no accompanying notice to Helena. She read the page twice. Sabine's old authority had not merely lingered because servants were slow to adjust. Adrian had renewed access to it after Helena was already Duchess. His card arrived 20 minutes later. Helena received him in the morning room. Adrian entered without papers in his hands and stopped several feet from her chair. She pointed to the seat opposite. He sat. Neither mentioned the touch they had shared 2 evenings earlier. Helena remembered the warmth of his bare hand around hers. But this morning, tenderness would have been an evasion. You renewed it, she said. Yes, not by forgetting to revoke your mother's arrangement. No, you made a new instruction. Yes, Helena rested one finger upon the page. What did where necessary mean? Adrian's expression tightened. I cannot define it more precisely from the wording. I am asking what you meant. I meant that Sabine could be consulted when military family questions arose that I did not know how to answer quickly. Callers? Possibly. Officers' wives? Yes, in principle. Subscriptions? Possibly. Helena's eyes sharpened. Adrian corrected himself before she spoke. That last answer is inference. I have not yet verified a specific instruction concerning subscriptions. Better. He gave a quiet breath. I am developing a deep dislike of that word. You may dislike it accurately. His mouth almost moved toward a smile, but the moment passed. Helena looked again at the page. Did you tell Sabine the permission would end after a particular matter? No. Did you tell the servants that her judgment must yield to mine? Not in this instruction. Did you tell me it existed? No. Why? Adrian did not hide behind the unfinished search, because she already knew the system. I did not. Helena waited. There were military families my mother had dealt with for years, old regimental obligations, widows, officers' wives, people whose connections I could not immediately place. Sabine knew them. Asking her was quicker than rebuilding that knowledge myself, or giving it to me. Yes, you kept the old road open because it saved you the trouble of making a new one through your wife. Adrian looked at her. Yes. Helena rose and moved toward the window. Do you understand what that did? I am beginning to. Then say it. He remained seated. It allowed Sabine to appear naturally competent because information still reached her. It made you appear less informed because I had not made certain the same information reached you first. Helena turned, and when servants looked to her, I had given them reason to believe doing so might still be acceptable. Even after I married you. Yes, the word hurt because there was nowhere for either of them to hide inside it. Helena returned to her chair. How long did this instruction remain active? I do not know how many later permissions were given. The secretary has not finished separating direct instructions from references to her name. What about the 1814 entry during my absence with Margaret? It is genuine. I will not interpret it until the surrounding records are fully checked. Helena held his gaze. Good. Adrian looked almost surprised. You approve? I approve of you resisting the urge to give me half the truth because you fear the whole one. I do fear it. Helena said nothing. Adrian continued. But I will not choose what you are allowed to know. Before she could answer, Mrs. Crispin entered carrying a letter. From Sir Robert Ellington, Your Grace. Helena broke the seal. Sir Robert's language was courteous, but the decision beneath it was unmistakable. He intended to suspend his next subscription of 40 guineas. Until the uncertainty surrounding Ravenscourt and the military committee had been resolved. Helena reached the final paragraph and stopped. Adrian watched her. What is it? She handed him the letter. He read it. Colour drained from his face. Sir Robert had been told by Lionel Mowbray, Earl of Selworth, that Helena was forcing Adrian to overturn long-established Ravenscourt arrangements during a private marital dispute. Lionel had further represented that Adrian himself regarded those changes as dangerous to the charitable work. Adrian lowered the page. I never said that. I know. Not to Lionel, not to anyone. Then he turned his conclusion into your opinion. Yes. Adrian's jaw hardened. I can replace the 40 guineas. The words left him on instinct. He stopped before Helena answered. His eyes closed briefly. No. Helena remained silent. Adrian placed the letter carefully on the table. That is exactly the wrong response. Why? Because it teaches everyone that damage to your authority can be repaired by my purse. It also makes the committee dependent upon my intervention instead of the work itself. Helena studied him. What should happen? Adrian looked at her. I would rather hear what you think should happen. The difference was small. She noticed it. Lady Tremaine sends Sir Robert the ordinary accounts. No defence of me. No appeal to loyalty. He may see which annuities were paid, which school fees were met, and which apprenticeship premiums were placed. And if he still withdraws, then he withdraws. Adrian's displeasure showed. I dislike that. So do I. May I introduce another subscriber? You may introduce one, or several. You may not replace the money yourself. You may not imply that subscribing buys Ravenscourt favour. And you may not tell anyone they are rescuing your wife. Agreed. Less than an hour later, Mrs. Crispin returned. Lord Selworth is below. He asks for a private word with His Grace. Helena looked at Adrian. Do you wish to hear him? Yes. Then hear him. Do not bargain in my name. I will not. Adrian returned 10 minutes later with anger held behind such restraint that his face had gone pale. Helena did not ask whether Lionel had insulted her. She asked, what did he offer? Adrian looked at her sharply. A settlement. Terms. Sabine withdraws from committee business and stops discussing the dinner amendment. In return, you and I publicly describe the entire matter as a misunderstanding caused by concern for your domestic circumstances. Did he say Sabine authorized him? Only that he was speaking for his family. And what, did you say? That I would make no agreement involving your name? Did you accept any part? No. Helena rose. Good. Adrian watched her cross to the writing desk. You are refusing it? Yes. Even if Sabine leaves the committee. Especially then. Helena drew out a fresh sheet of paper. If I trade truth for quiet, then every person who used my name without permission learns that the offense can be erased by a polite explanation afterward. She placed the blank sheet before him. Now I want the full record. Adrian looked down. Define full. Every surviving permission you gave Sabine after our marriage. Every direct instruction. Every office or servant who may have been told to treat her judgment as carrying Ravenscourt authority. Every date that can be verified. Every consequence that can be established. Adrian's hand remained still beside the page. This may damage me more than her. Yes. He lifted his gaze. Helena did not soften. If you want truth only when it proves Sabine wrong, then you do not want truth. You want absolution. Silence held between them. Then Adrian reached for the pen. You are right. Helena stepped away from the desk. She did not touch him. She did not reassure him. He had already shown that he could wait for her hand. Now he would have to prove that he could place every damaging fact before her without knowing whether honesty would bring her closer, or finally teach her how much easier her life might be without him. Sewer. The next morning, Adrian arrived at Dover Street, carrying a single bound memorandum of his own making, not an original household record. Helena noticed that distinction before he spoke. He placed it on the table between them and waited until she indicated the chair opposite hers. There was no attempt at touch, no appeal to what had passed between them before the musicale. Adrian opened the memorandum himself. I did not merely fail to end an old arrangement. I renewed it because it was convenient to me. Helena held his gaze. Go on. My mother's original instruction gave Sabine genuine authority during her illness. After my mother died, I never issued a clear household direction ending every part of that authority. Then, in the autumn of 1813, I made the failure worse. I told my secretary that Sabine could be consulted where necessary concerning inherited military family arrangements. Because she knew the system. Yes, and because rebuilding it around your wife required more effort. Adrian's expression tightened. Yes. Helena looked down at the memorandum. What have you verified since yesterday? 3 consequences. I have kept them brief because the original records remain at Ravenscourt. He turned one page. First, a question concerning the precedence of officers' wives was referred through Sabine. After our marriage, rather than being brought first to you. Second, a military family caller was directed according to her judgment, because a servant believed my instruction permitted it. Third, a charitable matter involving an established family connection was settled through the old channel before it reached your desk. Helena did not ask for the names. The pattern mattered more than another procession of wounded widows and confused servants, all verified. Yes, by surviving entries and the people who made them. Any inference? Not in those 3. Good, Adrian continued. I also verified what I did not do. I did not define where necessary. I did not set an end date. I did not tell you that I had renewed the arrangement. I did not instruct the household that your authority displaced Sabine's whenever the 2 might conflict. I did not require servants to bring disputed instructions to you. Helena sat very still, and you did not notice that every omission favored the person already inside the old system. No, I did not notice because the omissions also favored me. That answer made her look at him. Adrian's hands rested flat upon his knees. If Sabine knew the answer, I did not have to learn why the question existed. If a servant carried out an arrangement, I did not have to ask who had authorized it. If you appeared to manage despite receiving information late, I could tell myself the household was functioning. It was functioning. For me, Helena leaned back. Yes, the word settled between them. She looked toward the closed writing desk, where her father's compass remained in the upper drawer untouched. For years, Helena had thought Sabine's advantage was personal, familiarity, confidence, perhaps even the affection Adrian had denied feeling. The documents were revealing something less romantic and, in some ways, more damaging. "She did not possess your heart," Helena said. "No, but she possessed access to decisions that should have reached me." Adrian's face hardened with recognition. Helena continued, "That is why this has been so difficult to name. There was no single dramatic theft. She did not have to replace me in your affections. She only had to remain close to the places where choices were made. Because I left those doors open." "Yes," Adrian lowered his gaze. "There is still more. I assumed there would be. My secretary is continuing through the correspondence records. There are references after the 1813 instruction that may establish how often I wrote directly to Sabine." Helena's stomach tightened, but she refused the old instinct to ask whether the letters were personal. Nothing she had learned suggested an affair. The injury before her was already sufficient. "Do not summarize what has not been counted. I will not. Do not bring me loose extracts that someone can later claim were taken from context." "Agreed." Helena stood and crossed to the mantel, where a small calendar card lay beside the clock. "The military widow's subscription supper at Ravenscourt is next week." Adrian looked up. 6 days from today. "It was arranged before any of this began." "Yes, Lady Tremaine will attend. Yes, Sir Robert." He had accepted before suspending the 40 guineas. "He has not withdrawn from the supper." Helena turned. "Then we do not cancel it." Adrian's brows drew together. "You want to hold the supper while this remains unresolved. I want the work to continue while the truth is resolved. Sabine may attend. She was invited before I left Ravenscourt, and Lionel, also invited." Adrian rose, but he did not move closer. "What are you proposing?" Helena returned to the table. "Not a spectacle, not an ambush, an accounting where each person speaks only to what he or she directly knows." Adrian listened. "Mr. Mercer's dinner memorandum book and the amendment slip remain in his office at Ravenscourt until needed. He brings the bound book himself. The slip stays clipped where it has always been." "Yes, the late Duchess's household memorandum remains with the household records. The secretary keeps custody of the correspondence books. Nothing original comes to Dover Street, merely for my convenience." "Agreed. When the relevant people are present, Mr. Mercer states only what he prepared, what he saw, and what he heard. He does not declare who wrote the amendment because he did not see it written." Adrian nodded. "Lady Margaret may state what Sabine predicted and when. Lady Tremaine may state what she did or did not authorize concerning the committee. Sir Robert may speak to what Lionel represented to him." "And me?" Adrian asked. Helena met his eyes. "You answer for your own instructions." "Only mine, only yours. You do not turn your guilt into evidence against Sabine. If you gave her authority, say so. If you failed to revoke it, say so. If you do not know something, you say that too." Adrian absorbed the condition. "And you?" "I ask the questions." A faint change came over his face. Not pride exactly, something quieter. "Yes," continued. "No one accuses Sabine of writing the amendment unless there is proof or she admits it. Carrying the slip and claiming, 'I approved the change,' are facts Mercer can establish. Authorship is not. Even after everything she has done, especially after everything she has done, I will not answer misuse of authority by becoming careless with truth." Adrian stared at her for a moment. "You make vengeance look very small." "It usually is." Silence passed. Then he said, There is something I have not written in the memorandum. Helena waited. It is not a fact about Sabine. Then what is it? Adrian's voice lowered. A fact about me. He looked directly at her. I am afraid you will hear every record, understand every omission, see exactly how much of this I permitted, and still decide that your life is clearer, without me in it. Helena felt the words settle where tenderness might once have rushed to answer them. She gave him no false reassurance. That is possible. Pain crossed his face, but he did not flinch from her. I know. Then why continue? Because if I hide one thing in order to keep you, whatever remains of our marriage would be built on the same mistake. Helena held his gaze. That answer matters. Adrian did not ask how much. A knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Crispin entered with a sealed note that had just arrived from Ravenscourt. Helena opened it and read the secretary's precise hand. He has finished the first count. Adrian waited. The original correspondence copybook contains 9 post-marriage letters from you to Sabine that he considers relevant to the authority question. Adrian's expression went still. 9. The entries remain in the bound book, Helena asked Mrs. Crispin, though the answer was written before her. Yes, Your Grace. Helena read the final line. He has marked the places with narrow slips. Nothing has been removed. Adrian said, I can have copies made. No. Helena folded the note. No loose copies, no extracts carried around London. The original book remains with the secretary. The entries stay marked, and when the time comes, we read them in their proper order. Adrian looked at the memorandum between them, then at his wife. In 6 days, Ravenscourt House would fill again with subscribers, committee women, old acquaintances, Sabine, Lionel, and the people whose habits had allowed another woman's voice to travel farther than the Duchess's own. This time Helena would not enter the room after the decisions had been made. She would decide how the truth was heard. Sewer, on the morning before the military widow's subscription supper, Helena returned to Ravenscourt House for the first time since the night she had left it. She came in her own carriage from Dover Street with Mrs. Crispin and no trunk. That distinction mattered to her and apparently to Adrian as well. He met her in the smaller morning room rather than the entrance hall, sparing them the spectacle of servants watching for signs of reconciliation. He did not ask whether she intended to stay. Everything for tomorrow evening is proceeding as arranged, he said after she had removed her gloves. Lady Tremaine has confirmed. Sir Robert has not withdrawn his acceptance. Margaret will come. Sabine, still expected. Lionel, also expected. Helena nodded. Good. Adrian looked faintly surprised. You wanted them both here. I want everyone who speaks to speak where the people affected can hear the same words. That is not generally how society prefers its cruelties delivered. No, society prefers corridors. Helena crossed to the table, where a single sheet listed the records by category. She had forbidden originals from being carried about merely to create an impressive display, and Adrian had obeyed. Custody, she said. Mr. Mercer's dinner memorandum book remains in his office. Yes. The cream amendment slip is still clipped inside at the original page. Nothing has been detached. The late Duchess's household memorandum, with the household records. The correspondence copybook, with my secretary. The relevant entries remain marked with narrow slips. No pages have been removed. Helena looked up. Sir Robert's letter? His own copy remains with him. He intends to bring it if needed. Good. She set the list down. No one reads anything today. Adrian's brows drew together. Not even the correspondence? Tomorrow. Together, I will not. Spend this morning trying to absorb 9 letters while servants are preparing a supper, and half the house is watching, whether I cross the threshold like a wife returning home. Adrian's expression changed. No one has been told you are returning home. I know. I made certain of it. Helena met his gaze. Thank you. The words were simple, but he received them as though she had given him something fragile. He did not reach for her. Mercer has limited tomorrow's household staff to those already assigned, Adrian said. No one has been dismissed. No one has been warned to remember events differently. My secretary has been told to answer only what the records establish. And you? Helena asked. I will answer what I did. Even when the answer makes Sabine's conduct look less singular. Especially then. Helena watched him. 6 days had changed the quality of his restraint. At first, he had obeyed her boundaries because he feared losing her. Now, there were moments when she thought he was beginning to understand why the boundaries existed, even when they frustrated him. That difference frightened her more than anger had. Anger was easy to leave. Growth was harder. Adrian crossed to the window, but kept several feet between them. I have been thinking about what I said at Dover Street. You have said a great deal there. About being afraid your life might be clearer without me. Helena waited. Adrian looked toward Grosvenor Square beyond the glass. I thought the worst possibility was that you might discover I had failed you and leave because you hated me. And now I think the worst possibility is that you might understand me completely and simply prefer the peace. The truth in his voice stripped the sentence of self-pity. Helena leaned one hand against the back of a chair. Why is that worse? Because hatred would still make me important. He turned toward her. Peace without me would mean I had spent 6 years believing I was central to your life while making myself unnecessary to it. Helena said nothing. Adrian continued. I decided what truths you could bear. I decided which household arrangements were too tedious to trouble you with. I decided silence meant contentment, because that interpretation cost me the least. His mouth tightened. I have been deciding for you in ways that did not look like decisions. Helena felt something inside her soften and resisted the impulse to protect it. Yes, I do not know how to repair that without asking you to teach me every step. You cannot ask me to manage your transformation as another household duty. I know, do you? I am trying to. Helena looked at him for several long seconds. The man before her was still the Duke of Ravenscourt, a man accustomed to rooms reorganizing around his arrival, yet he stood before his own wife, waiting to learn whether even regret had boundaries. Adrian, yes? Helena heard her own heartbeat. May I hold you? He went completely still. The question seemed to strike him harder than accusation. Yes, Helena crossed the space between them. She did not offer a hand first. She placed her arms around him. Adrian inhaled sharply and remained motionless for one heartbeat, then another, as though afraid that embracing her back without permission might break what she had chosen. Helena tightened her arms slightly. Only then did his hands settle carefully against her back. There was no desperation in the embrace, no attempt to pull her closer than she had come. He simply held her. Helena rested her cheek against his coat and felt the restrained rise and fall of his breathing. For 6 years they had stood beside one another at dinners, balls, committee evenings, funerals, and family calls. She could not remember the last time they had held each other without duty, waiting on the other side. Adrian's hand shifted once against her back, then stilled. Helena controlled the duration. When she drew away, he released her immediately. Neither of them pretended the embrace had solved anything. "That was not a promise," Helena said. "I know. It was not forgiveness, I know." Adrian's voice was rougher now. It was still more than I expected. Helena looked at him. "Do not make gratitude into another way of refusing to want things." Something almost broke across his face. Before he could answer, a knock sounded. A footman entered with a folded note upon a tray, delivered for his grace. Adrian looked at Helena before taking it. "Do you want me to open it? It is addressed to you." He broke the seal and read. The change in his expression was immediate. "Sabine." "What does she say?" Adrian handed Helena the note. The message was short. If complete truth mattered, Adrian should be asked how often he had written directly to Sabine after his marriage. Nothing more. Helena read it once and returned it. "She wants the number to feel like a secret." "The secretary has already identified 9 relevant post-marriage entries," Adrian said. "You knew that from his report." "Yes, have you read them?" "Not since they were marked. Some I vaguely remember writing. I will not tell you what I think they contain before we see them together." Helena studied him. "Good." Adrian gave a weary breath. "There is that word again. Earn it often enough, and you may stop fearing it." He almost smiled. Helena looked toward the closed door. "Sabine does not know what we have or have not read." "No, then do not answer her note." "Agreed. And do not let tomorrow become a performance about 9 letters." "What should it be?" Helena met his eyes. "About what those letters allowed." Adrian nodded slowly. "Tomorrow afternoon, 1 hour before the guests arrive, the secretary brings the original copybook. We read every relevant entry in order, nothing removed, nothing summarized beforehand. Together, together, together." Helena picked up her gloves. Adrian did not ask her to remain for luncheon. He did not ask whether she missed Ravenscourt. He only walked with her as far as the morning room door and stopped. Helena glanced back once. The house around them was still legally hers, socially hers, and by title hers, yet for the first time since she had become Duchess. No one was assuming that ownership of a place meant surrender of a choice. Tomorrow she would return again, not as a woman hoping to be given her position back, but as the woman who would decide what the truth required once every voice had finally been heard. The following afternoon, Helena returned to Ravenscourt House 1 hour before the first guests were expected. She came from Dover Street with Mrs. Crispin and left her carriage waiting in the mews rather than sending it away. Adrian received her in the smaller drawing room, where his secretary already stood beside a narrow table. On it rested the original bound correspondence copybook, 9 slim markers projected from the closed pages. Nothing else had been brought in, no loose copies, no extracted sheets. Helena removed her gloves and looked first at the book, then at the secretary. "These are the entries you identified." "Yes, Your Grace." 9 post-marriage letters from His Grace to Lady Sabine, that bear directly upon household or military family authority. "And the book has remained in your custody?" "Yes." "No pages removed?" "None." Adrian said nothing. Helena looked at him. "We read them in order." "Yes." The secretary opened the book at the first marker. The earliest relevant letter was dated February 1814. Adrian's copied words concerned the seating of several officers' wives, expected at Ravenscourt. One woman claimed precedence through her husband's seniority, another through family connection. Adrian had written to Sabine that she knew the sensitivities better than he did and should advise the household accordingly. The final sentence was the one that held Helena's attention. Mercer and the servants were to understand that Adrian approved whatever practical arrangement Sabine judged least likely to cause offense. Helena looked at Adrian. You made her judgment yours before you knew what it would be. His face tightened. Yes. Did you tell me this decision was being made? No. Helena nodded to the secretary. Continue. The second letter was dated June of the same year. A group of military callers had been expected while Adrian was away from Grosvenor Square for part of the day. He had instructed Sabine to identify which visitors required immediate attention and which might properly be received later. The copied wording told Mercer to treat Sabine's direction as Adrian's own until his return. Helena did not move for several seconds. There it is, she said. Adrian's voice was low. Yes, not an old habit, not merely servants remembering your mother. No, your authority directly given. Yes. Helena looked at the 9 markers. Read the remaining 7. Only far enough to establish their purpose. I do not need every courtesy or social phrase. The secretary obeyed. The later entries concerned family connections among former officers, invitations involving military households, questions of precedence, identification of unfamiliar callers, and several charitable arrangements whose details had been inherited from the late Duchess's circle. None was romantic. None contained an intimate confidence. There was no declaration of affection, no secret meeting, no promise of a future together. Yet the absence of adultery brought Helena little relief. The pattern was clearer than scandal would have been. Again and again, Adrian had treated Sabine as a convenient extension of his judgment. When the final marker had been reviewed, Helena rested one hand against the table. She did not have your heart. Adrian's eyes remained on her. No. She had access to your authority while I was still trying to understand my own. He closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Helena felt no satisfaction in making him admit it. That distinction matters. I will not allow anyone tonight to turn this into a story about jealousy, because that would be easier for them to understand. I agree. Do you? Her gaze sharpened. Because if society decides this was merely one woman fearing another woman had her husband's affection, then every structural choice you made disappears behind gossip. Adrian absorbed the rebuke. Then I will not permit my embarrassment to simplify it. Helena looked toward the secretary. There was also the 1814 household entry connected with my absence. Yes, Your Grace. The secretary crossed to a second-bound volume already waiting on a side table. He did not remove it from the room or carry it to Helena. He opened it to a marked page. The entry was dated August 1814. During the 3 weeks Helena had spent helping the newly widowed Lady Margaret. The wording was brief. In Helena's absence, Lady Sabine might advise upon military family arrangements as before. No end date followed. No later note cancelled it when Helena returned. Helena stared at the phrase, as before. 2 words capable of carrying an old system forward without anyone ever being required to state openly that the Duchess had been bypassed. Did you order that? She asked Adrian. Yes. Did you remember doing so before the record was found? I remembered asking Sabine to help while you were with Margaret. I did not remember the wording. And when I returned, I gave no formal instruction ending it. Because, Adrian answered without delay. Because the household appeared to function, and I chose convenience again. Helena's mouth tightened. At least you no longer require me to extract the sentence. No. The clock on the mantel struck 5. Within an hour, the subscription supper would begin. Helena looked at both bound volumes. Close them. The secretary did. They remain with you until needed. No one handles the correspondence book unless I ask. The household memorandum remains in its ordinary custody. Yes, Your Grace. Adrian looked at Helena. Do you want the letters read again before the others? No. Their effect can be stated. 2 entries are enough if someone disputes the pattern. I will not turn 9 letters into theatre. A footman entered quietly. Sir Robert Ellington has arrived, Your Grace. Helena looked at the clock. Early. He asked whether he might speak before the other guests gather. Helena nodded. Show him here. Sir Robert entered, carrying a folded letter inside a small leather case. After greetings, he looked directly at Helena. I brought the letter Lord Selworth sent me after the music-hale. Your own copy? The one I received and retained. Keep it with you. Helena did not reach for it. If needed tonight, you will state what was represented to you and produce it yourself. Sir Robert inclined his head. Gladly. He hesitated. For what it is worth, Lady Tremaine sent the committee accounts. The work appears sound. Then judge it on that basis. I intend to. The next arrivals came close together. Lady Tremaine entered first, followed by Lady Margaret and Mrs. Ashcombe, who had heard Sabine speak at Lady Harbury's. Helena greeted them without discussing what would happen later. She wanted no rehearsed indignation, only facts. Lionel Mowbray arrived 10 minutes afterward. His expression was composed, though the moment he saw Sir Robert, something wary crossed his face. Adrian remained beside the fireplace and did not engage him beyond the courtesy required between host and guest. Helena watched that restraint. Lionel had once offered him an easy settlement. Adrian had refused it. Now he would have to endure the harder consequence of hearing his own failures spoken aloud beside Lionel's deliberate distortions. The final carriage was announced just before the first ordinary supper guests were due. Lady Sabine entered in silver-grey silk, elegant enough to suggest she had no reason to fear the room. She greeted Lady Tremaine, Sir Robert and Adrian before turning to Helena. Your Grace, Lady Sabine. Sabine's eyes moved briefly across the company. She saw the secretary. She saw Sir Robert's leather case. Her gaze rested for 1 second too long on the closed household memorandum book before returning to Helena. This appears unusually formal for a subscription supper. Helena's voice remained calm, only because informal arrangements have caused enough trouble. Sabine's expression barely changed. Lionel shifted near the door. Adrian did not speak. Helena looked toward the steward waiting in the passage beyond. Everything important remained where it belonged. The correspondence book with the secretary, Sir Robert's letter with Sir Robert, the household memorandum in its proper volume, and in Mr. Mercer's office, still clipped inside the bound dinner memorandum book, the narrow cream slip that had moved the Duchess 4 chairs away from her husband and placed another woman in her seat. Helena turned toward the doorway. Mr. Mercer, bring the dinner book. Sewer. Mr. Mercer returned from his office, carrying the bound dinner memorandum book in both hands. The narrow cream amendment slip remained clipped inside at the original page. He placed the volume on the table before Helena and stepped back. No one spoke. Beyond the closed doors, ordinary supper guests were beginning to arrive, but in the smaller drawing room, the only sound was the faint movement of carriage wheels in Grosvenor Square. Helena looked at Mercer. You prepared the original dinner arrangement? Yes, Your Grace. Where was I seated? At His Grace's right. And Lady Sabine? Beside Lady Tremaine. Helena nodded toward the clipped slip. What did the amendment change? It placed Lady Sabine at His Grace's right and moved Your Grace 4 chairs farther down. Did you write it? No. Did you see anyone write it? No, Helena allowed the answer to stand before asking the next question. What did you see? Mercer looked towards Sabine, then back to Helena. I saw Lady Sabine carrying the slip in the passage near my office that afternoon. Later, I heard her give it to Thomas, the junior footman, helping with the place cards. Sabine's face had become very still. What did she say? Helena asked. She said, Her Grace prefers the arrangement altered. See that the cards are moved before the guests come down. Did she say I had spoken to her directly? No. Did she say His Grace ordered it? No. Did she say Lady Tremaine ordered it? No. Helena closed the book gently. Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Remain for the moment. She turned to Adrian's secretary. One point only. Did Lady Sabine once hold legitimate authority in Ravenscourt household matters involving military families? Yes, Your Grace, under the late Duchess. And after my marriage, His Grace renewed permission for her to be consulted in certain matters. The surviving records also show later direct instructions. Helena did not ask him to repeat the 9 letters. Enough. She looked toward Lady Margaret. Before I announced any change in my committee duties, did Lady Sabine predict that I would withdraw? Yes, Margaret said. She said you would probably step back and that she would keep the military work steady. Mrs. Ashcombe added, She told me your responsibilities would likely be redistributed quietly. Helena turned to Sir Robert, and Lord Selworth represented His Grace's opinion to you. Sir Robert opened the leather case he had brought with him, but did not surrender the letter. Yes, he wrote that the Duke believed you were forcing harmful changes upon Ravenscourt during a private marital dispute. Helena looked at Adrian. Did you give Lord Selworth that opinion? No. Lionel's expression hardened. It was an obvious inference. Sir Robert faced him. You did not present it as inference. Lionel opened his mouth. Helena lifted one hand. That point is established. Then she turned to Sabine. Lady Sabine, did I tell you to change my chair at the officers' supper? No. Did His Grace? No. Did Lady Tremaine? No. Did anyone with authority over my place at that table? Sabine's jaw tightened. No. Helena's voice remained calm. Yet Mr. Mercer heard you tell a servant that I preferred the change. Sabine gave a small, brittle shrug. I believed you would prefer avoiding an awkward arrangement. You did not say you believed it. You spoke in my name. Sabine's eyes flashed. The distinction seems precious now that everyone has decided to make ceremony out of a seating card. Then answer one final question. Helena held her gaze. Did you write the amendment slip? Lionel stepped forward. Sabine, you don't have to answer a servant's accusation dressed as certainty. Sabine turned on him. Be quiet, Lionel. The room contracted around the words. Helena waited. Sabine looked at the clipped cream slip. For the first time that evening, her composure faltered. Yes, she said, I wrote it. No one moved. Helena felt no victory, only clarity. Why? Sabine looked at Adrian first, then at Helena. Because I spent years holding Ravenscourt together while the late Duchess was ill. I knew every military widow she supported, every officer's wife whose pride required handling, every family quarrel that could ruin a dinner before anyone sat down. I knew the house before you entered it. That is true, Helena said. Sabine seemed startled by the agreement. Helena continued. Your work mattered. Then you understand. No, service is not ownership. Sabine's face hardened. Adrian kept consulting me. Yes. His servants kept listening. Yes. His mother trusted me. Yes. Helena did not retreat from any of it. And you mistook those truths for permission to decide when my authority mattered and when it did not. Sabine's voice sharpened. You had the title. You did not have the knowledge. Then you might have taught me. Sabine said nothing. You might have corrected me privately. You might have told Adrian that his divided instructions were unfair to both of us. Instead, you learned that I would absorb an insult rather than disrupt a room. Sabine's silence became its own confession. Helena stepped closer by one pace. You believed I would endure it because I had endured smaller exclusions before. A faint flush rose in Sabine's face. Helena's voice did not rise. Endurance was never permission. Lady Tremaine stepped forward. Lady Sabine, from this evening, you will no longer receive callers, direct correspondence, or represent intentions on behalf of this committee unless expressly asked by the committee or the person concerned. Sabine looked at her. You would discard years of experience. No, Lady Tremaine replied. I would separate experience from authority. Sir Robert inclined his head toward Helena. I have examined the accounts Lady Tremaine sent. The work was not neglected. My 40-guinea subscription will be restored, Helena answered. Thank you for judging the work rather than the gossip. Sir Robert then turned to Lionel. And I expect the record corrected, Lady Tremaine added. The committee minutes will state that Lord Selworth attributed an opinion to His Grace which His Grace did not give. Lionel's mouth tightened. That seems needlessly humiliating. The original claim cost the committee support, Lady Tremaine said. The correction may bear the same light. Adrian finally moved away from the fireplace. He had not intervened once. Now he looked not at Sabine, but at Helena. There is still my part. Helena said nothing. Adrian faced the room. Lady Sabine used a structure I left standing. Her choices are hers. Mine are mine. Sabine went pale. Adrian continued. I married Helena after Colonel Jonathan Haldon saved my life during the campaign of 1811. I believed providing for his daughter was honorable repayment. It was not a sufficient foundation for a marriage. Helena's breath tightened, but Adrian did not stop. Love came later, slowly enough that I mistook it for habit, because habit demanded less courage from me. His gaze met hers. I treated my wife as though she were secure enough to neglect. I kept using old channels because they were convenient. I renewed Sabine's access after my marriage, because rebuilding those arrangements around Helena required attention I failed to give. No one looked away. Sabine did not steal my authority, Adrian said. I gave parts of it to her and failed to consider what that meant for the Duchess standing beside me. Helena's authority was never absent. I failed to honor it. The silence afterward was not admiration. It was accountability. Helena preferred it. Lady Tremaine quietly directed the smaller company toward the adjoining room before the arriving supper. Guests could sense that anything unusual had occurred. Sir Robert kept his own letter. Adrian's secretary returned the correspondence copybook to his custody. Mercer carried the dinner memorandum book back to his office with the cream amendment slip still clipped inside. Nothing changed hands for dramatic effect. Nothing needed to. An hour later, after the subscription supper had begun, and the immediate questions were done, Helena slipped into the long gallery to wait for Mrs. Crispin and her cloak. Adrian found her there, but stopped several feet away. May I say one thing? Helena looked at him. One, I am not asking you to stay tonight. Good. His mouth tightened. I love you, Helena. The words entered quietly, without demand. I loved you before I admitted it to myself. I loved you while behaving as though love made you permanent, and therefore safe to neglect. It does not excuse what I did. I am not saying it to make you return, Helena. crossed the distance between them. Adrian remained still. She lifted one hand and touched his face. "I love you too." His breath caught. Helena continued. "That is why the silence hurt. I did not need a duke to protect me from every room. I needed the man I loved to see when I was disappearing inside his." Adrian covered her wrist lightly with his hand. "I see it now. Then keep seeing." "I will." His eyes moved to her mouth and then returned to her eyes. "May I kiss you?" Helena felt the old ache in her chest change shape. "Yes." Adrian leaned toward her slowly. Helena closed the final distance herself. Their first kiss was warm, careful, and deliberate. There was no claim in it, no urgency, only the intimacy of two people who had finally said aloud what silence had nearly destroyed. When Helena drew back, Adrian released her at once. "I am still returning to Dover Street," she said. "I know. Tonight does not erase 6 years. I know." Helena rested her fingertips against his cheek once more. "Good." Mrs. Crispin appeared at the end of the gallery carrying Helena's cloak. Adrian stepped back. He did not ask when Helena would come home. He did not call Dover Street an absence or a punishment. He simply watched as she put on her cloak and walked toward the stairs. Helena looked back once before leaving. Sabine had been made accountable for what she chose. Lionel would correct what he falsely attributed. Adrian had finally named his own failure without using guilt to purchase forgiveness. And Helena, still loving him, returned that night to the house she had chosen for herself. Sur. 3 weeks later, the first change Helena trusted was not something Adrian said. It was what he stopped asking. He did not ask when she meant to return to Ravenscourt House. He did not send servants to discover whether she dined at home, whether Lady Margaret had called, or whether Helena intended to attend a particular evening gathering. His cards arrived properly. When he wished to walk with her in Green Park, he asked. When she declined, because Lady Tremaine needed an afternoon given to committee accounts, he accepted the answer without appearing afterward under some more convenient pretext. When they disagreed over whether an additional subscriber should be approached, Adrian argued his point and then allowed Helena to make the decision concerning her own work. None of it was dramatic. That was why Helena believed it. Ravenscourt itself had changed in less visible ways. Mr. Mercer had issued clear household instructions defining who might give directions in the Duchess's name. The late Duchess's old delegations were recorded as ended unless expressly renewed for a specific purpose. No servant was punished for having followed the confused habits of earlier years. The responsibility rested where it belonged, in the instructions that had failed them. Helena's separate use income remained protected exactly as her settlement allowed, and the Dover Street house continued to be maintained from funds that did not depend upon Adrian's personal allowance. He had not once suggested otherwise. Lady Tremaine sent Helena a copy of the committee minutes after their next meeting. Lionel Mowbray's correction appeared plainly in the record. He had represented an inference as the Duke of Ravenscourt's stated opinion. His Grace had given no such opinion. Lionel had disliked the wording and had been permitted to dislike it in writing. Sir Robert Ellington restored his 40-guinea subscription after reviewing the accounts, and 2 smaller subscribers joined after being introduced by Adrian without promise of access, invitation, or favor. Sabine did not return to the committee. Within 10 days, she left London for the Mowbray family property, where society could decide for itself whether her departure was strategic, dignified, or merely necessary. Helena did not concern herself with the answer. Sabine had done valuable work once. She had also crossed lines that service did not entitle her to cross. Both truths could remain true without Helena carrying either woman's future on her conscience. On a warm July afternoon, Adrian called at Dover Street shortly before 4. Helena received him in the back drawing room, where the windows stood open toward the small garden, and the city sounded pleasantly distant beyond the walls. He had brought no flowers. He had learned that gifts were dangerous when they arrived before questions. Instead, he carried a book Lady Margaret had mentioned wanting to borrow, because Helena had said she would see her the following morning. "You remembered," Helena said. "I am developing alarming habits." "Memory? Attention," she smiled. "Do not boast. It may frighten the household." Adrian's answering smile came more easily now. He had changed in another way too. He no longer watched every expression on Helena's face, as though one wrong word might banish him permanently. The fear had not vanished. It had become quieter, disciplined by the understanding that love could not be maintained through constant reassurance. They spoke for nearly an hour, not about Sabine, not about Colonel Halden, not about the dinner book. They discussed Lady Tremain's proposal for apprenticeships in Portsmouth, Lady Margaret's determination to redecorate a drawing room. Everyone else considered perfectly respectable, and whether Adrian had been correct to refuse a political dinner he considered intolerably dull. "You were wrong," Helena told him. "I suspected as much. You should have gone." It would have been 4 hours of men congratulating one another for repeating opinions they already held. "That is called society." Adrian laughed softly. The sound affected Helena more than she expected. There had been so little laughter between them during their marriage that she had almost forgotten how young he could look without restraint, tightening his face. When the clock struck 5, Adrian rose. "I should go before I become guilty of overstaying." Helena stood as well. He took 2 steps toward the door. "Adrian," he turned. Helena had thought about the words for 4 days. She had considered waiting another week, simply to prove that she could. Then she realized that delay for its own sake was another form of surrender, only this time to fear rather than duty. "I want you to spend the remainder of the London season here." Adrian did not move. "Here, at Dover Street." His eyes searched hers. "As your husband," Helena almost smiled, "I have not acquired another position for you." The tension in his face eased only slightly. "Are you certain?" "Yes. You are not inviting me because you believe Ravenscourt expects an answer." "No. Or because people are beginning to talk." "People began talking before I had finished packing the first evening." Adrian nodded. "Then why?" Helena stepped closer. "Because I am choosing you." His breath caught. She continued before emotion could turn the sentence into something larger than she intended. "I am not surrendering this house. I am not declaring the last 3 weeks an interruption before our real marriage resumes elsewhere. Dover Street is mine. My life here is mine. I want you in it." Adrian's eyes grew bright. "I love you. I know." Helena touched his coat lightly near the lapel. "And I love you. Not because you finally behaved properly for 3 weeks, because the man I loved has begun learning how not to make love an excuse for possession." Adrian covered her hand with his, but did not pull her closer. "May I hold you?" "Yes." Helena moved first. She stepped into his arms and rested her cheek against his shoulder. Adrian embraced her carefully, then more fully when she settled against him. The embrace was warm, familiar in a way their marriage had never quite managed before. Helena drew back enough to look at him. Adrian did not lower his head. He waited. She rose slightly and kissed him first. It was brief, affectionate, and entirely hers to begin. When she drew away, Adrian smiled with an expression so unguarded that Helena felt laughter rise in her own chest. "That," he said, "I was not prepared for. Good. I thought accuracy was your preferred virtue." Surprise has its uses. 4 days later, shortly after noon, Adrian arrived at Dover Street with one modest trunk, a valet carrying a smaller case, and no announcement beyond the calling cards sent ahead that morning. Helena watched from the upper landing as Mrs. Crispin directed the valet toward the blue dressing room adjoining Helena's own chamber. No one assumed a shared bedroom. No servant exchanged knowing smiles. Adrian had asked where his things should be put, and Helena had answered. That was all. When the servants withdrew, Helena returned to her writing desk. Her father's small brass campaign compass rested near the blotter where she had placed it that morning. The worn edge caught the light. She opened the lid once. The initials JH remained beneath it, unchanged by everything that had happened. The needle trembled, swung, and settled north. For years, Helena had allowed Colonel Jonathan Holden's sacrifice to stand silently between herself and Adrian, as though one dead man's courage had created an obligation the living must never question. She no longer needed the compass to tell her which direction duty required. Her father had chosen once. Adrian had chosen badly, then learned to choose differently. Now the choice belonged to her. Helena closed the compass and placed it in the upper drawer of her own desk. She shut the drawer. A quiet sound behind her made her turn. Adrian stood in the doorway. He had not crossed it. He simply waited, one hand resting loosely at his side. Helena looked at him. At the man who had once believed marriage meant she would always remain where he left her, and at the threshold he now refused to cross without invitation. She walked toward him and held out her hand. Adrian looked down at it, then back at her face. Only when she kept it extended did he take it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. Helena smiled. "Come in." And this time Adrian entered the life she had chosen.